The mansion was silent, wrapped in the golden hush of dusk. A lonely millionaire sat in his wheelchair, staring out the vast window. Years of wealth, yet his heart carried nothing but emptiness. The world had given him everything except someone who truly cared. Then came her, a young maid with soft hands and a humble soul. She spoke less, but her silence healed what words never could. Every day she brought him tea and unknowingly peace. He would watch her move, graceful, gentle, unaware of his gaze. It wasn't desire that stirred in him. It was gratitude, aching and pure. But one night, as the rain whispered outside, something changed. He couldn't hold back the tears or the truth buried for years. When she leaned close to comfort him, his voice trembled. "I need love. Don't move," he whispered, his eyes glistening. The maid froze, not in fear, but in disbelief, for in that moment the rich man wasn't a master. He was a broken soul, and she, the servant, held the power to heal or shatter him forever. What happened next was beyond any forbidden tale ever told. A truth unfolded, one that no heart was ready to bear. Love, pain, sacrifice, all collided in a single night. And by sunrise, the mansion would never be the same again. The grand chandelier shimmered, but his heart remained dim inside. Arthur lived in silence, where echoes of laughter once belonged. The empty wheelchair rolled through marble floors of forgotten joy. Every ticking clock reminded him of a past he couldn't rewind. He once built empires. Now he couldn't lift his own soul anymore. Servants feared his anger. None saw the tears behind his pride until one quiet morning, a new maid entered his world unseen. Her name was Grace, simple, gentle, and far from his class. She bowed without words, her eyes filled with humble strength. Arthur barely noticed her presence at first, lost in memories, but fate worked softly without noise, like sunlight through clouds. Each day, Grace dusted his world of gold and loneliness away. She spoke kindly to the gardener, laughed with the cook softly. Arthur began to watch her reflection in polished silver frames. He didn't know why his heart beat faster when she smiled in her care. His cold mornings felt a touch of warmth again. He wondered, could kindness heal a wound? Money could not. The mansion no longer felt empty, but alive in quiet motion, and for the first time Arthur looked forward to another day. Love had not arrived yet, but its footsteps echoed. Faintly, the housekeeper whispered. The old man had begun to change. No one knew that a storm of emotions had just begun, brewing. For every silence Grace left behind, love secretly took its place, and destiny waited at the corner, ready to turn the page. Grace lived humbly, keeping her gaze low and heart steady. She had seen cruelty before, in faces richer than his. Yet Arthur was different. Behind his frown lived deep sorrow. She never dared to speak much, only smiled in passing light. Her uniform smelled of soap. Her fingers cracked from labour. Each step in that mansion was a prayer to survive the day, but she noticed Arthur never shouted when she was near. Sometimes he would drop his spoon just to hear her say, "Sorry." The air between them grew tender, charged with something unnamed. He would ask about her life. She'd whisper, "There's little to tell." Her eyes told stories of struggle, of dreams she buried young. He admired her silence, her strength wrapped in soft politeness. One evening she found him crying over an old photograph. Without a word she handed him a napkin. Trembling inside, he looked up, saw not a servant, but a soul holding him still. That night he couldn't sleep. Her face haunted his thoughts. Was it affection, or the ache of being seen after years of void? Grace, too, felt something bloom, forbidden, but warm and kind. Every moment near him felt dangerous, yet heartbreakingly pure. The mansion whispered with secrets the walls couldn't hide. Two souls, one rich, one poor, began to need each other. And in that quiet need, a fragile bond silently took birth. Love tiptoed through marble halls, afraid of being caught, and the night carried their unspoken hearts closer softly. Rain fell like tears upon the glass as thunder hushed the city. Arthur sat by the window, staring at shadows of his past. Grace entered with a candle, her voice softer than the rain. "Sir, you should rest," she said, unaware of his trembling heart. He turned his chair toward her, eyes heavy with memories. "Grace," he whispered, "do you believe love can heal the broken?" Her heart raced. She didn't know how to answer that question. "I believe kindness can," she murmured, placing tea beside him. He reached for her hand, not with desire but desperation. The next morning the mansion felt colder than the grave. Grace's room was empty. Her uniform folded on the chair. Arthur wheeled himself through every corridor, calling her name. Only echoes answered, carrying the weight of her goodbye. She had left before dawn without a single farewell note, the servants whispered. The master had been abandoned, but Arthur knew better. She had left to protect his name. He stared at the teacup she last held, still faintly warm. The air smelled of her. Faint soap, tears and farewell. Days turned to weeks and nights stretched without sleep. Every raindrop reminded him of that night's trembling whisper. He replayed her words. "You're not alone anymore." Again and again doctors came. Priests prayed, but nothing could heal the absence. He'd lost wealth before, but this loss was beyond any pain. Love had made him human, and absence made him fragile again. One evening he rolled to the piano and pressed a single key. The melody that followed was one she used to hum softly. Tears blurred his vision. His fingers trembled on the ivory keys. He didn't play music that night. He played memories instead. Somewhere across town, Grace felt her heart ache without reason. The bond they shared had no words, yet it still lived within her. She prayed he'd forget her, but love doesn't obey prayers. Each sunrise hurt more than the last, reminding her of his eyes. And while the world moved on, two hearts stayed frozen in time, apart in body, united in soul, punished for loving too purely. Months later, Arthur received a letter with trembling hands, the handwriting unmistakable, gentle, like her voice. His heart pounded as he unfolded the fragile piece of paper. "Sir," it began. "I'm sorry I left, but I couldn't bear your pain." Grace wrote of her struggle, her nights filled with silent tears. She'd found work in a small town, living in humble grace. "I still pray for you," she said, "for peace to find your heart." Her words bled love through every line, pure and unspoken. Arthur wept, not out of weakness, but sacred remembrance. He clutched the letter to his chest as if holding her again. The next day, he asked his driver to prepare the car. "I must see her," he said, his voice shaking but firm. The butler warned. "Sir, the journey is long, your health. I have nothing left to lose," he interrupted with quiet fire. The road stretched endlessly. His wheelchair folded beside him. He whispered prayers with every mile. Just one more time. At sunset, he reached the town dusty and calm. There, by a church, she was helping children cross the road. Grace turned, her eyes widened, tears forming instantly. He smiled weakly. "You see, I found peace where you are." They embraced. Time stopped. Grief melted into love's glow. No words were needed. Their silence was their reunion for love unspoken. Can sometimes scream louder than vows. The world that tore them apart now watched them heal. Fate had delayed their moment, but couldn't deny it forever. Their reunion brought joy, but destiny wasn't done testing them. Arthur's health weakened faster than his heart could endure. Each breath grew shorter, each night longer than the last. Grace cared for him again like before, with quiet devotion, but now she wasn't a maid. She was his entire reason to live. They lived in a small cottage, far from the mansion's pride. He would smile, watching her cook, humming in soft sunlight. "I used to own a palace," he said. "But this feels more like home." Grace would laugh, a sound sweeter than any wealth could buy. Their love had found peace, but time demanded its due soon one night as the wind whispered through the old wooden walls. Arthur held her hand tighter than ever before. "Trembling, Grace," he said, voice fading, "promise me you'll keep living." She shook her head, tears falling freely onto his chest. "You gave me life when I had nothing left," she whispered. He smiled faintly, eyes closing. "Then we saved each other." The candle burned low, their shadows embracing on the wall. By dawn, his chair stood empty, but his face looked at peace. Grace buried him under a lone tree where the sun always touched. She placed his letter beside him. Their love sealed forever. The town wept for her grief, but she smiled through the pain, for she knew death couldn't end what was never of this world. True love isn't lost. It transforms into eternity's song, and wherever the wind blew she felt him whisper, "Don't move." Love doesn't ask for permission. It simply finds two souls and binds them. The world may judge what it never understands, but hearts know their truth. Arthur had wealth that could buy everything except a moment of peace. Grace had nothing but kindness. Yet she gave him the world in silence. Their story reminds us the greatest riches lie in compassion, not gold. No throne, no mansion, no name is greater than a heart that chooses love. And sometimes the ones we think come to serve are sent to save us, because love in its purest form is never about possession. It's about healing. When you find someone who sees your scars and stays, that is grace itself. So cherish the hearts that love you quietly. They are life's rarest miracles. Iced miracles.